Welcome and thank you for tuning in. This is the account with a report for day 408 of the war in Ukraine. Today's extra segment is about the alleged US and NATO documents regarding Ukraine's counteroffensive that were leaked on social media. All other updates are grouped into the usual situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and international developments. Before we start the news though, the flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. Fighting was reported around the Bakhmut railway station. It can safely be assumed that the railway area is a grey zone with Ukrainian forces on the west side and Russian on the east. Avdiivka. Ukrainian soldiers continue to establish firm positions north of Spartak and forced Russian soldiers to fall back significantly. Some sources claim that Russia established itself around the Donetsk airport south of Spartak. And to start the news segment, the updates on the leaked US and NATO documents. The New York Times has reported that classified military documents detailing secret American and NATO plans for building up the Ukrainian military ahead of a planned offensive against Russia have been circulated on Twitter and Telegram. The Pentagon is currently investigating who may have leaked the documents that appeared on social media. Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, convened another Supreme Commander-in-Chief meeting to discuss Russian actions and the prevention of data leakage. Ukrainian officials have called the leaked plans a Russian hoax and fake. The Department of Justice has also opened an investigation into the leak. It is unclear who is behind the leak and where exactly it originated. A document is a map listed as top secret that shows the status of the conflict as of March 1st. The map shows Russian and Ukrainian battalion locations and sizes, as well as total assessed losses on both sides. The casualty numbers claimed on this document were doctored. Russian losses are far higher than the 16,000 to 17,000 killed in action listed. For Ukrainian losses, the document claims 61,000 to 71,000 Ukrainians killed in action, a number that is far higher than actual Pentagon estimates. The US believes that Russia or pro-Russian elements are behind the leak. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. On the occasion of the beginning of Ramadan, a holy month for all Muslims, Ukraine offered Russia to exchange all prisoners of war who profess Islam. The Russian Federation rejected this offer. Ukraine's military intelligence reported that more than 3,000 Russians have contacted the surrender hotline in March. President Volodymyr Zelensky took part in Iftar, the fast-breaking evening meal of Muslims during Ramadan, and said that now it will be a tradition at the official level as well. The Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine appointed Ruslan Kravchenko as the head of the Kyiv Oblast military administration. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. The mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov, reported that the explosions which rocked Melitopol on April 6th occurred in an area where Russian military personnel and equipment were gathered over the past 4 days. Moscow installed authorities in the occupied territories of southern Ukraine have increasingly forced civilians to obtain Russian passports, resorting to violence against those who refuse to do it, the Ukrainian military's National Resistance Center reported. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. Overnight, due to bad weather conditions, Russia ordered all missile carriers to port. After the storm passed, Russia deployed 1 missile carrier with a total salvo of 8 cruise missiles. Belarusky Hayun, an independent Belarusian military monitoring project, reported that Belarus has sent tanks and armored vehicles to the border with Lithuania. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has proposed that Ukraine cede the Crimean Peninsula to Russia to put an end to the war in Ukraine. In response, Ola Nikalenko, the spokesperson of the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry, stated, "Ukraine appreciates the efforts of the President of Brazil to find a solution to stop Russian aggression. At the same time, we must make it clear. Ukraine does not trade its territories." Russian technicians who were present at the Slovak airbase in Sliač until last year may have deliberately damaged Slovak MiG-29 fighter jets that Bratislava recently supplied to Ukraine. While the jets are able to fly, they are not capable of combat. And now for the intelligence report segment. starting as usual with the UK Ministry of Defence. In recent days, Russian forces have regained some momentum in the battle for Bakhmut. Since late March 2023, their advance had largely stalled. Russia has made further gains and has now highly likely advanced into the town center and has seized the west bank of the Bakhmutka River. Ukraine's key 0506 supply route to the west of the town is likely severely threatened. Russian regular forces, likely including airborne troops, have probably reinforced the area, and Russia is again using artillery more effectively in the sector. There is realistic possibility that, locally, Wagner and Russian MOD commanders have paused their ongoing feud and improved cooperation. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko and Russian President Vladimir Putin met in Moscow on April 5th and 6th to discuss further Union state integration, with Putin likely focused on strengthening Russian economic control over Belarus. Lukashenko delivered boilerplate rhetoric that continues to indicate that he has no intention of involving Belarus further in Russia's war effort. Russian commanders are reportedly constructing specialized company-size units within key frontline formations engaged in urban combat to reinforce the diminished combat effectiveness of most Russian units. According to information obtained by an anonymous Ukrainian reserve officer, whom the Institute called a reliable source, Storm Z companies appear to be formed of newly recruited reservists. Each company is comprised of 100 personnel, broken into 4 capture squads, 10 personnel each, 4 fire support squads, 10 personnel each, a 2-person company command element, a 5-person combat engineering group, an 8-person reconnaissance group, a 3-person med-evac group, and a 2-person UAV crew. They are intended for conducting urban combat operations or operation in complicated geographic areas to capture important and strategic objects such as strongholds, command posts, and communication centers. The personnel that staff these companies receive 10 to 15 days of refresher training, a remarkably short amount of time to adequately train personnel, even reservists with some experience, to perform complex combat tasks and create unit cohesion. The Storm Z companies will likely primarily deploy along the Avdiivka-Donetsk city frontline, where Southern Military District (SMD) units are heavily committed to continuously unsuccessful offensive operations. China continues to rhetorically downplay its support for Russia and demonstrate that there are limits to the declared no-limits Russian-Chinese partnership, but it will not be a true neutral arbiter in the war. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The enemy continues to focus its main efforts on conducting offensive actions in the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Marinka directions. More than 40 enemy attacks were repulsed during the day. In the Liman direction, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the areas of Sebryansk Forest and Verkhnokamianske. In the direction of Bakhmut, the enemy continues to conduct offensive actions, tries to take full control of the city of Bakhmut. Hostilities continue. During the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the Bodanivka and Ivanivske districts. Units of the defense forces repelled about 14 enemy attacks in the specified area. In the Avdiivka and Marinka directions, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensives in the areas of Novokalinove, Siverne, Pervomaiske, Marinka, and Popieda. The fiercest battles on the indicated part of the front continue for Marinka, where more than 10 enemy attacks were repulsed. In the Zaporizhia and Kherson directions, the enemy continues to build up defensive lines and positions in terms of fortification. The Russian occupiers actively continue the forced passporting of the population of the temporarily occupied territory of Zaporizhia and Kherson Oblast, exerting psychological and physical pressure on people. In particular, at checkpoints, the enemy restricts the movement of Ukrainian citizens who have not received passports of the Russian Federation. The occupier purposefully and deliberately search vehicles, record all personal data of citizens who do not have Russian documents, threaten to ban entry into the city. Also, the enemy forces the postman to hand out forms to the local population, in which it is necessary to indicate information about the presence of a Russian passport. Citizens who do not have an enemy passport are subjected to constant searches, intimidation, and coercion to obtain this document. At the same time, for the same reason, the enemy threatens the parents of graduating students with the refusal of their children's certificates of basic secondary education. Also, the invaders are forcing to change the marriage certificate and the certificate of registration of technical means from Ukrainian to Russian samples. And that wraps up the report. Should you be interested in any of the details to any article I mentioned, you can find links to them in the description. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.